Right. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to stop screen sharing. Hopefully you can all see me. Thank you for joining. It's been a funny old week. Excuse me, I just turn off my phone. We are recording this session, so you will get the opportunity to rewatch and take it in a little bit more at your leisure. We did have around 40 register for this morning. Not so many have actually turned up, but they are aware that there is a recording, so they may have other priorities at the moment. But we do really appreciate you still participating in the workshop. Obviously, we're incredibly grateful to Jess Lemur for running the final of these sessions. So Jess has run, this is the third in the digital marketing series, and it's slightly delayed just due to lockdowns and illness, etc. But here we are where we are. So first of all, can I check you can all hear me and see me okay? If you could use the raise hand function, that would be wonderful, because that lets me know you're all there, you're all okay, and you can hear me and see me. Wonderful, wonderful. That's excellent. Lovely to see. Thank you so much, everyone. If you can lower your hand again, that would be great. Just a little bit of housekeeping for those that may not have done one of these webinars before on Zoom. You should be able to see down the bottom, bottom of your window, a toolbar, which has a chat box, and it also has a Q&A box. So both of those are available during the workshop for you to drop in questions. Ideally, if you could pop the questions in the Q&A box, but also it's nice to have some chat. It certainly helps Jess and the other attendees if you can drop in thoughts and comments as we go along, or share ideas and share your experiences. That really helps when we're doing a virtual workshop. It's nice to have that interaction, especially for Jess, so she doesn't just feel like she's talking to a computer. In the previous two workshops, we have had the Department for Enterprise join us at the end to talk about the various support packages and funding that's available. Unfortunately, for obvious reasons, they're rather busy at the moment. So please, what I'll do is I will send you the slides, and if you do have any questions around any funding options, then I can share those with you after. So without further ado, and fingers crossed, I will bring Jess over to say hello and start the workshop. Here she comes. Just need to unmute yourself, Jess.
Can you hear me now?
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I know it's been a bit of a week, so I appreciate you taking the time to join. For those of you who are going to be watching on sort of repeat and watch the recording, thank you for taking the time. So what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to share my screen, but I just thought I would just say two things. The one is I'm really hoping there's some questions from all of you and some comments in the chat and in the Q&A feature. If you have any questions that you don't feel comfortable asking here on a public forum, please feel free to email me or to send me a LinkedIn message. All my details will be in the slides at the end. And I think just in general, I do tend to get quite excited and passionate about the subjects that we've spoken about over these last 3 courses. So if I'm speaking too fast or you need some clarity on something, just pop a message in the chat and I'll do my best. So what I'm going to do quick, if you'll give me a second, I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know if you now see my slides. Can you see those all right?
I can see them, Jess, yeah. And we've got some raised hands there, so all good.
Okay, perfect. I'm just, if you give me 1 second, I'm just going to open the chat on my other screen. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, I I think I'm just going to, some of you have been on all 3 courses, which is amazing. But what I wanted to do is just introduce myself and give you a little bit of an overview of who I am. So I have a business with my husband called Afundi, which we started about 2 years ago. And we specialize in software, digital marketing, and website development. And we also have a branding and design arm to the business. So what we are really looking to do is help businesses improve their online presence and improve the way they use technology. So on a personal level, I like to think of myself as a digital marketing specialist. I'm really passionate about learning and imparting knowledge, and I've really found these workshops so valuable, and more so because afterwards there's been quite a few people that have got in touch, asked questions, and we've just connected, and I think it's really good for the industry as a whole. I'm a creative, a big thinker, absolutely love the Isle of Man, and I think just in general you will see that I really love talking about things like analytics and how it can help you, and talking about websites and what it can do for your business, mostly because I've seen how valuable it can be. So what I'm going to try and do during the course of this sort of workshop is try and not go too detail driven, because it is a massive subject and we could probably talk about it for the whole day. But what I've tried to do is give as many tips and tricks as possible. I've also put quite a few links to useful sort of blogs and YouTube videos. So if any of you want to dig a little bit deeper and take a little bit further, I have put information that you can do so. But what I've tried to do is kind of aim this at the SME market, try and make sure that it's covering all the way from someone who maybe isn't really doing anything with data to someone who's actively looking at their data. So just out of interest, as I start to jump in, could you just tell me maybe in the chat if you feel comfortable, is there anyone out there who's actually doing a formal report, whether that be weekly, monthly, quarterly, once a year, and a report that's kind of covering website traffic, social media traffic, and just something that they either doing for themselves as a way to kind of keep track of their success, or a report that they're presenting to others in the business? So if you feel like you're willing to share, I'd just like to sort of gauge if people are making use of analytics. So in these first few slides, I have put a little bit about our business, which you can read about later. But what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of go through and we're going to try and look at, why would we look at data? Why would we look at analytics? Then we're going to dive more into Google Analytics and look at ways that you can set it up to work for you and different types of reports. And then we'll look at each of the social media channels. And we picked these sort of 4 because we felt this was the most popular at the time. However, if anyone's got any specific requirements for other platforms, just reach out. And then at the end, we just talk about what you can do. So once you've kind of gathered all of this information, what do you do with it? And why is it valuable? And I've also put some links to some tools that you can use. So we're going to talk about analytics in the form of Google Analytics, and then the analytics that come with each of the social media platforms. But if you want to take it a step further and possibly collate it all into one sort of tool, then I have put some links for those who want to do that. So I see some of you are putting some comments in here, which is great, and I'll refer to them in a second. So I thought I'd start with, you can't manage what you don't measure. And I think one of the things that I find quite astounding is that people will build a website or they will engage on social media, but they actually don't know whether they're doing it right or wrong. They don't know if it's working, and they don't know if there's sort of any return on investment. And so the idea is that it's probably not good enough to just have a website. You really want to monitor, is it working for you? Is it actually helping with your marketing and business objectives? The same with your social media. If you're looking to target a certain demographic, but you're not monitoring your insights and looking at whether you're actually connecting with that demographic, then, these are the things you want to ask yourself so that you can make actionable sort of changes that are going to help you achieve your objectives. So I guess the most logical place to start is, well, then you need objectives, because if you're going to evaluate the data and you're going to assess it, whether it's successful or not, you kind of need to know what you're trying to achieve. And so, when we look at objectives for your business in relation to analytics, you're probably going to ask yourself things like, do you want to increase business development? Are you trying to increase your sales? And that obviously in turn will be your profits. Are you looking at increasing your brand awareness? Are you launching new products or services that you want to get out to the masses? Are you trying to enter new markets? So maybe you are, opening an office in a new jurisdiction, or you're trying to sell your products off island. Do you want to make sure that you're kind of improving key stakeholder relations and, trying to build maybe brand advocates? And obviously, do you want to enhance your customer relationships? And if you do want to do any of these things, once we get into the analytics, if you know what your objective is, then you can keep coming back and saying, well, we're doing this, but is it actually helping us achieve our objectives? And so once you have objectives, you normally then set your goals, and then your goals become your KPIs, your key performance indicators. So I think with objectives, it's very much sitting down, for example, with your website and saying, well, what do I want from my website? Maybe it is to capture leads. Maybe it is to sell your products. Maybe it is to try and educate your consumers. Now, if those are your objectives, you need to make sure that your website is doing that. And the same for social media. If you're trying to use it as a communication tool, but you're getting little engagement, then you need to ask yourself why and start to make changes. So as you can see, it's no good at just looking at your analytics and all the data and saying, oh, that seems great. You need to tie it back to an actual objective. So if anyone's done any formal sort of marketing training, you would have seen something called your SMART objectives. And basically, each of your objectives should be SMART. So they should be specific. And the idea there is that you don't want to make them too broad, because then it's really hard to ascertain whether you're actually achieving it. It needs to be measurable. So, there are things that sometimes aren't measurable, but in this case, for the role of looking at your data, you want to make sure that you've got measurable things that you can look at from a quantity or qualitative purpose, and something that you can actually measure over a long-term period, so you can start to see trends. Actionable. So again, it's not good enough to just look at your data and then think, well, there's nothing I can do about that. You really want your objectives to be something that you can actually action when it comes to your data. And then going on to that, it brings relevance. So you want to make sure it's relevant in terms of that it's actually specific to what your problems face now and what you want to achieve. And then obviously there needs to be time related to that. So you need to set your objectives over a time period. I want to achieve X over X time. I want to do this by then. And I think, again, if you sit down and you look at your business and marketing objectives, and maybe if you won the 2 previous courses, you would have gone through this already, or you would have been thinking about how you want to put objectives in place. Make sure you use the SMART method. Now, once you have those objectives, what you're going to want to do is make sure that they're kind of building on your SWOT analysis. So again, we spoke about that on the previous 2 courses. And so you want to build on your strengths, you want to minimize your weakness, capitalize on your opportunities, and counteract your threats. So when you're sitting down and thinking of those objectives, bear all of this in mind so that you set yourself realistic objectives, and that you know that when you look back on those objectives, you're not wholeheartedly disappointed because you set unrealistic ones. So once you have these objectives, you normally say, okay, well, I've got an objective. Now I need to see what are the key performance indicators that relate to that objective. So these are essential to businesses and your marketing success, because it's a metric that you can sort of determine and pinpoint, and that will be your success meter. So I think, one of the things that people always say is, oh, I don't really know, how many leads I should be getting on my website. the key thing is to point and sort of come up with a metric and then monitor that over time. And maybe it was unrealistic, maybe you completely undervalued it and actually you can achieve more. But the idea is your key performance indicators should always be changing. Another way to look at KPIs is you can look at industry KPIs. So there will be benchmarks that industries have. So maybe your click-through rate, or maybe it's the amount of traffic you should be getting on a site, or the amount of sales. So you don't always have to pinpoint them for yourself. You can look at your industry and see if there's benchmarks. So some of the key performance indicators we may talk about today are things like customer acquisition cost. And that's basically the amount of money you will spend in order to convert a potential customer into a customer. It's quite hard to be really specific about this, because every industry will have a sort of different method to evaluate whether a potential customer then becomes a customer. But that could be something that you want to set aside and say, well, I really want to focus on that customer acquisition cost and monitoring that, and I want to improve that. And that could be a KPI for yourself. Things like cost per conversion or cost or conversion rates, again, that's looking at things like your website, like how much is it costing you to get a lead on your website, and which you can then take through your sales funnel. Reach and engagement, again, when we talk about reach and engagement, we often refer to it on social media. So how much is it actually costing you to reach, let's say, 3,000 people or 5,000 people? And so sometimes it's not just the money you spend on advertising, it's also the money that you spend to create content, all the time that you're spending in order to update your profiles. And then I'm not sure if many of you would have done this, but there's something called a customer lifetime value. And basically what that is you can kind of calculate the profit that you generate from having a single customer. It's a really hard thing to do. And if you're interested in trying to evaluate that, you may want to look at some case studies. Coca-Cola has quite a good one in terms of their customer lifetime value. And you'll find that there's quite a few articles about it online, but it is sometimes really hard to calculate, but that could be something that you're really interested in. So, kind of tying this all together with your key performance indicators, you want to get understanding of your business and your sort of marketing objectives. You then want to put those into attainable goals. So a goal, for example, could be, well, I want to generate more leads off my website. So one of the goals could be that you're going to try drive more traffic to the site through things like blogs. And then once you have the traffic on your site, your KPI could be that you want to get 10 leads from your website a month, or you want to get 5 leads from your website a month. And the idea is that then at the end of the month, you know what your objective is, you know what your goals are, you know what your KPIs are you achieving them? And I think the idea is that all of us can kind of get into a false sense of security where we say, oh, our website looks phenomenal. We've built it. It's great. It does everything it needs to do. But we're actually not looking at it from a perspective, well, is it actually working for us? The same with social media. People will often say, I'm on social media, don't quite know why. I think I'm doing a good enough job. Now, the only way to really definitively answer that is if you have KPIs in place. So are there any questions at this point just about objective setting and KPIs? Just pop it in the Q&A if there is. But I just found this cool little image, and basically it says these are some of the goals that you could have, and these are possible metrics that would tie back to that goal. So let's say you wanted to create more brand awareness. You would then possibly look at the following metrics: your website traffic, how many page views you're getting, your video views, your downloads, the sort of engagement you're getting on social. And then if you went down to like sales, you'd be looking at things like your online sales, your offline sales. And so you get the idea that you need to have a goal and an objective, and then you need to associate what metrics are going to help you achieve that goal and what you need to monitor. And I think, again, I just put a note there, you should assign specific metrics and numbers to each. So what you want to do is make sure that you're also saying, well, over the last 3 months, I've got 3,000 sort of page views on my website. I want to up that by, 200. So I want to get 3,200 in the next month. So the idea is that you also want to make it that there's a specific number. You want to quantify it. Because saying I just want to increase it, well, by how much? And then, how do you evaluate that on an ongoing basis? So one of the things that a lot of people get confused about is the difference between metrics. So you'll hear things like awareness metrics, engagement, conversion. So I just wanted to really break this down, because what you might want to do is you might want to say, well, I can't monitor everything. I can't really go and look at absolutely every piece of data and every metric. So let me just focus maybe on my conversion metrics, or I just want to focus on my engagement metrics. So in this case, you need to know what metrics tie back to those sort of objectives and those goals. So engagement refers to how involved the site visitor or your social media connections are with what you are doing. So if you think about engagement, that there is people commenting, that's people really getting to grips with what you're doing. So for example, time spent on a website or a specific page, that normally indicates some sort of engagement. Repeat visitors to the website, so people coming back and engaging on multiple levels with your site. Website bounce rate, you may want to monitor that, because if people aren't actually staying on your website and exploring more, then they're probably not engaged with your site. Again, social engagement, are people commenting? Are they sharing your posts? If not, you're probably going to need to take some action. And then something like the number of times that your emails are opened when you send out an email campaign. So the idea is that if you go and take all the metrics that you can possibly monitor and you break it down into engagement, conversion, and awareness, it may make it really easy for you to absorb. So on that, when we look at conversions, that's when someone follows through with a particular action you want them to take. And we spoke about this in a lot of detail when it comes to the actual website course that we did maybe a week and a half ago. So, how do you get people to convert on your website? Well, if you're not monitoring those stats and you've put in so much effort for your website to be geared up towards conversion, you're probably going to get disappointed. So, things that would indicate a conversion would be obviously a sale. It would be someone filling in your contact form or subscribing to a newsletter. It would be someone who takes you up on like a call or interacts with you on live chat. It could be someone who downloads a document and in exchange gives you their email address, so gated content. And I think the idea there is that engagement is great, but it kind of should lead you towards conversion. Same with awareness, which we'll speak about next. So conversion is normally the hardest thing. So if you think about someone coming onto your website, quite easy to get them on your website, but a little bit harder to get them to convert into a lead or into a sale. So when it comes to awareness, those are the things about mass. That's about trying to get people to see your product and interact with your product on a mass level. And brand awareness is quite hard because sometimes you can't calculate return on investment, but things you should be looking at is like the website traffic volume. How many people are coming to your site? So that's sort of an awareness metric. Where are people coming from? Social media. Okay, well then are you creating awareness on social that's pulling people back to your site? Email subscribers, that's all about awareness, but then engagement is when they open and the email, and conversion would be when they buy the product from the email. So it kind of works on awareness, engagement, and then conversion. But I think, again, there's so many metrics out there. I think you need to sit down and say, well, what am I most concerned about? And it could be all three, or you could just start with your awareness metrics, build into that sort of engagement, and then finally into conversion. So, I think, We'll talk a little bit about vanity metrics in a second, but a lot of people obsess about something like how many social media fans or followers they have. Now, that's a great metric when it comes to awareness, but when it comes to engagement and finally conversion, doesn't matter how many followers you have, it's the percentage of those followers or those fans that are actually interacting with you. So that's really, really important. So on that, I'm just going to check the chat because it seems like we've got a bit of activity going on here. Awesome. Okay, so it seems that some people are using analytics, some people are generating reports, some are pretty keen to learn more. So hopefully this course is going to hit the right sort of level. You know, there's going to be certain sections where we may go into a little bit more detail than where you are right now, but the idea is that you have the video to refer back to and you have the manual. So, you know, start small and then you can always come back to this and get better and better at how you're reporting. So I don't know if anyone's heard of this, but there's vanity metrics versus actionable metrics. But I always have a good giggle when people obsess about vanity metrics, and I've seen it so much working with corporates where they really praise things like we've got X amount of Facebook followers. Doesn't really mean anything. It looks great on paper and it's great for awareness. But what you really want is, you know, how many people are engaging with you on Facebook, or how many people are actually opening your emails, not how many people have subscribed to them. And so what I find is that people get really obsessed with vanity metrics because it makes them feel really great. But the things that are much harder to get into are the actionable metrics. So like I said, the email opt-in rates, purchases, you know, click through, how many people are actually clicking on things, not just seeing it. And I put this in there. Vanity metrics make you feel good, but they don't offer sort of clear action for you. And I think the idea is again, that you don't want to get too obsessed with just how many website hits, sort of traffic hits you get and how many people like you. You want to actually get into the nitty-gritty because that's where action can take place. So, you know, some of the actionable metrics that you want to look at is like your return on investment. So a lot of you probably won't be calculating this very specifically. You'll probably know what your marketing budget is. But one of the things that I like to do is sometimes do a little case study for a client and say, well, we've created, let's say, a video campaign. So it's cost us X to create the videos. Now we've put them on social media you know, we've spent some money on Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads. And actually from all of these videos, we have got you 2 clients, and those 2 clients are worth X. So you spent Y, and you know, your return on investment is then really clear. So sometimes it's really hard to do, but every now and then it's quite nice to do around campaigns, and it can be really nice to do, especially if you're doing paid advertising. So I paid X, but ultimately I got Y from this. So, you know, if you haven't done that before and it's not something you want to jump into, that's absolutely fine. But I think once you get more sophisticated or really into the detail of your data, you want to make sure that you're calculating that the money you're putting into your marketing efforts are actually being returned. Otherwise, it can be quite a negative journey. So, you know, cost per lead is quite similar. How much is it sort of costing you to acquire a lead? You know, bounce rate, that's an actionable metric. If you've got a high bounce rate on your website, so someone's arriving on a page and they leave immediately from that page, you can start asking yourself questions like, well, maybe my site is loading too slowly. Maybe it's not engaging enough. Maybe I'm not making it very clear within the first few seconds who I am and what I do. And so you can see you can actually take action on that in order to get a better result. It's the same as the rate of return visitors. If you've got very low return visitors, let's say on your website, then you may want to do something like a content marketing campaign. So generating more dynamic content in the form of blogs. The more blogs you share, hopefully the more clicks you'll get back to your website, and that will increase your rate of return visitors. Your conversion rate. So if you see that people aren't actually converting on your website, you may want to go and look at, well, why is that happening? Is my checkout system too convoluted? Is my form maybe too long? So you can see those are things that you can actually take action on. So you want to monitor that in order to make informed decisions. Again, your source attribution, where are people coming from? And I think the big thing with analytics is, and you'll see in a second, there is so much you can monitor. So you really want to focus on like a small area, get that right, take action on that, and then keep moving forward. You don't want to just monitor too much and then have way too many questions and not enough answers. So in the chat, George has asked, website with several pages impact the bounce rate? So Georgia, a really great question. It will impact the bounce rate, but there you're probably going to want to focus more on your sort of conversion rate. So as long as people are spending a certain amount of time on your website, so you can monitor the time they're spending on that single page, and then they're actually converting. So if you've got a form, or people are getting in touch on that site, that will probably be something that you will then be like, okay, that's fine. So it is quite hard on a single page, but you're going to probably focus more on time spent on the site, your conversions, and maybe even the content. So if you've got like video on the site, is that being watched? Or if you've got, something like Hotjar, which we're going to speak about a bit later, maybe you can monitor how people flow through that single page site. And if you see there's a logical flow, then if your bounce rate is high, that's okay, as long as you are achieving the other stats. Alex, what would you say the best free tool is for measuring Google Keyword Planner? Alex, do you mind if we come back to that, because I'll talk about tools right at the end, and I'll cover that in a second. So I think the big thing about reporting and about looking at your data is that you have to make it a priority. So for some of us, it could be something that we're monitoring on a daily basis. It could be something that we're monitoring weekly or even yearly, but you need to kind of determine what's going to be good for you. Another top tip is not to overanalyze things. So look at it and then go on each day and go, oh, I've only got 5 people on the site today. You need to give it a bit of time and have some traction. And you can get obsessed about things like, I've got 1 more follower, I've got 2 more followers. You need to give it time to take traction. So set a time period for reporting that is going to be attainable for you, but that's also not going to disappoint you. So, I think the purpose of measurement is obviously to drive you to make future improvements and take action. So what you want to do is make sure that it is a priority. So if you've invested time in your website, I would say you really want to have something like Google Analytics running, so you can make sure that the investment that you've put in is actually, you're getting value out of it and you're getting return on that. Maybe you want to pick a date each month and use that date to review. So, maybe it's the last day of each month or the first day of each month, and you do a review of the month gone. You're probably going to want to Analytics is definitely going to monitor and keep all of that data, but it's the stuff that happens that drives the data that you may forget about. So if I were you, I'd do maybe a 1-page report, and there are some tools that can help you with that. That just kind of says, this is a snapshot of where I am. This is my website traffic. This is my social media following. I ran a campaign over this month. You can see how it sparked my traffic. So as you look back over time, you can make sure what was successful and what wasn't. You want to set your targets. And again, the moment you document those, they become really real. I know as a smaller business, we have sort of targets that we want to achieve with all of our online platforms, but we probably fall into the trap that we think we're quite a small business, therefore everyone knows what those targets are, but we really should document them and put them down, because as the business grows, you want to make sure that everyone's on board. You want to look at industry standards. So, a lot of times people will say to me, oh, my email open rate is so low. But then when you compare it to industry standards, it's actually much higher. So sometimes a way to make sure that you're not completely off the mark is to monitor those industry standards. You're going to probably want to use some tools to make your life a lot easier. So there are tools where you can aggregate all of your traffic from Google Analytics, from all of your social media platforms, and you can put it into one and generate one single report. A lot of those tools do come with a cost. However, the time it sort of takes to pull that report, export it out of Google Analytics, export everything out of social media and compile it, they normally do it with a click of a button. So it can add great value. And what you do want to do as well is assign the right people. So if you're in a business and you've assigned reporting to someone who is really not interested in it, it's going to be the first thing that kind of falls by the wayside. So I think what you want to make sure is that the person that's going to be looking at all of this data is somewhat interested in it. And even if you're not, I can guarantee you the way to kind of spike your interest and improve your interest in it is when you start to take action and you see your results. So I know a lot of people have come on these courses before and they're just like, oh, this is so much to look at, so much to do. But the moment they sort of set a KPI or set a goal and an objective, and then they achieve it, it just becomes something you can be quite passionate about. So I see there's a question that's popped into the chat about where do you find industry standards for email open rates? Rainy, probably the best place to look is if you are using an HTML email software tool such as MailChimp or Campaign Monitor. They normally guide you on what industry standards they have seen. So they'll have reports on their blog, which breaks it down by different industries and then gives you a general open rate. So I think the general open rate, a successful open rate, sits at around 30 to 35%. They deem that as successful. But if you want something specific, go to their blogs because they're often writing about that. Okay, let's jump into Google Analytics. So is there anyone who has never used Google Analytics or who has it running on their website but has never logged in and never looked at it? If so, what I have done is I have put some details on how to actually set it up as if you've never used it before. Now, when I run through those in a second, even if you are using Google Analytics, you may want to pay special attention because there may have been some things that you didn't actually do when you set it up, and it could really help. So why Google Analytics? A lot of people will say, well, why are you using Google Analytics? Well, the simple answer is that it's such a powerful free tool. It's completely free. It is so powerful. There are so many metrics that you can monitor, and it's just really easy to use, I think. I say that, but a lot of people hate it. But I think in comparison to other reporting tools, it really is quite easy. And I think, again, what is nice about Google Analytics is that you know that it's a tool that you can rely on. It's backed by Google, and it does integrate with other Google products. So that often has a huge benefit. So one of the things that I wanted to go through is this seems to be where one of the biggest stumbling blocks comes in, is that people don't actually understand the terminology associated with Google Analytics. And in turn, that creates a lot of confusion. So I'm going to briefly run through these, but a dimension is something that you'll hear about a lot. And a dimension is a descriptive attribute of an object that can make different values. So in there, you'll see exit page, screen, session duration. That's what we call a dimension. Whereas a metric, these are individual elements of dimensions, which can be measured in the form of a sum or ratio. So that could be the amount of your average session duration or the page or sessions that each person is actually seeing. Sessions, that's the period of time that someone spends, sort of on your site. Again, you can look at sessions within a specific date range. And, I think, again, people get a little bit, I think, obsessed with something like just general traffic. Sessions are quite good because it's someone is actively engaging on your site. So a user, that's basically a person. So it's a user is only assigned a user title once they have had one session, at least one session on your website. And you get new users and return users. So new users are people who have never been on the site, and return users, as you would expect, are people who've come back to the site. Page views, so that's the total number of pages viewed. So as a user, if I go onto the website and I look at the home page, then the about page, then the contact page, then that's 3 page views per user. Then you're also going to look at pages per session, and that shows how many pages a visitor visited on your site. We've just spoken about bounce rate, but basically bounce rate is if someone enters on one page and leaves on that single page. And like Georgia raised, when you have a single page website, your bounce rate understandably is quite high. And we'll talk about, again, what is the thing of concern versus something that you need to calm down about because it's in relation to your site. So, other things is a goal. So you can now set up goals in analytics, and basically it's the number of times a user actually completes a goal. So it could be something like filling in a form, purchasing a product, placing an order, and goal setting is actually one of the most underused elements of analytics. And so I have actually put a whole link at the bottom of the document that goes into a lot of detail of how you can set up goals within your analytics. An example of which is we currently run a website called Eat Out, and we're monitoring the goals in terms of how many times people go and complete an order. So when someone places an order for food, we say that's a completed goal. And so we're trying to monitor how many people come on the site versus how many people actually complete that goal. So it's really valuable insight. So if you're not doing that, I'd look at that. So then a conversion is obviously the number of times people complete that goal. So sometimes it's referred to as a conversion, sometimes it's referred to obviously as goal completion, but either way. Acquisition, that's how you acquire your users. So where are your users coming from? Are they coming from search engines? Are they coming from social media? Are they coming from email campaigns? Really important to know that, because when we're looking at the success of everything you do online, if you're spending a huge amount of time on social media, but you're not getting traffic to your website, and one of your objectives is to increase your website traffic and your website conversions, then obviously that's going to be an issue. So acquisition is important. Campaigns, so you may have a specific campaign that you set up. So it could be, let's say, building a landing page where you've got an ebook or a white paper that you want people to download. You can set up a specific URL and sort of track the success of that specific campaign. So it's really important for those who maybe are running, let's say, an event, and they want to see how many people come to the specific event page. And they can also then use that specific URL for their social media advertising. So if you're interested in that, I'll put a link so you can learn how to set up specific campaigns. Then we look at behavior on the site. So in a second, I'll show you a graph that shows a bit of behavior, but basically that's looking at how people interact on your site. Where do they arrive? What do they do? Where do they go? And you can kind of plot that perfect journey. Now, if you are on my course, on the website course, we spoke a little bit about how important it is to sit down and sort of test your website as if you were an end user. So if your objective is to fill in the contact form, if you arrive on the homepage, how quickly can you get to the contact page? How quickly can you get to the contact form? How quickly can you fill that in? And so you could actually monitor people's behavior. Are they doing that exact journey? If not, maybe you need to improve the user journey. So knowing those sort of terms is quite important. And I would familiarize yourself with it, because if you're going to do a bit of reading after this, or if you're going to try and improve your skills around Google Analytics, those terms are pretty important and they'll underpin your understanding. So now, if you've set up Google Analytics, you may have done a lot of these, but I would still pay attention. So the idea is that you need to set up Google Analytics with an email address that you always have access to. I have had clients in the past who set up their analytics with an email address, they lose that address, and it becomes a bit of a rigmarole. So make sure that you use an email address that you're going to have access to. Once you've actually gone in and set up your Google Analytics, and I will, again, there's a link to say, if you've never signed up, I've put the link to sign up. Once you've done that, the most important thing is getting Google Analytics set up on your website. Now, for a lot of you, that will be something that you're going to have to engage a developer or your website designer on, because they need to put in a specific sort of code into your site. It can be tricky for some, depending on what your website's built on. So if you haven't got to that part and that's proving to be difficult, just pop me a message and maybe I can, give you some tips and tricks. But it is something that normally you need to engage almost a third party on. Now, one of the things you also want to make sure is that you're filtering out your own traffic. So I go to our website regularly to look at things, to copy and paste some testimonials into presentations. And what you want to do is make sure that you're not monitoring your own traffic. Otherwise, you're going to have a really inflated sort of sense of your traffic volume. And so you'll need to know what your IP address is. And again, there's a YouTube video that I found that I thought was really helpful that you can watch after this. And it shows you exactly the steps to do all of that. If we went through just even these 4 or 5 things, it would have taken us ages. So I rather wanted to put it here so you can then go away and have a look at it afterwards. Now, another thing you probably want to do is ensure that you're filtering out any sort of bot traffic. So you only want real human traffic, and Google now has a sort of a tick box, so you can actually tick it and it will restrict monitoring any bot traffic, which is really nice because then you get a much clearer picture of the true traffic on your site and the true engagement. Then another thing is probably to connect your Google Search Console. So if any of you are using your Google Search Console and looking at your keywords and monitoring that, you want to connect the two, because then a bit like this picture on the right, you'll start to see exactly what keywords people are using to find your website. So again, if you haven't set up your Google Search Console, I have put a link so you can do that, and it's very easy to connect the two. And I think it's a really important tool to have, because what you will see is those keywords that you may be using, going back to our first workshop, as part of your content that you're putting out there. You want to make sure that the keywords that you are including are actually appearing. If not, you may want to sort of jig what keywords you're using on your site and in your content and on social media. So I think, again, the setup, just the basic setup, is just so important. So if any of those things are proving to be an issue or a barrier, or you're confused, like I said, there's a YouTube video, which you'll see over there. And I just thought it was a really simple, informative way to take you through each thing. And again, I've put some links to how to sign up, and a nice article again that has the 26 best things to do when signing up for Google Analytics. So spend some time looking at that, because I think getting the basics right will help you in the long term. So I'm just going to look at chat. There seems to be some activity. So let me have a look. Awesome. Okay. So nothing for us to chat about just yet. Now, one of the things that you will realize when you log into Google Analytics is that there is tons of metrics that you can and data that you can absorb, and it can be quite overwhelming. And I know even when I go in, I get quite lost after a while. So it's super user-friendly and simple to use, but you can just really go down a rabbit hole. So you can spend time looking and drilling down so specifically on things. So what I think would be the easiest thing will be for you to split out your reports. And even if you're not physically reporting, maybe you can have these slides up when you next go into your Google Analytics, and then say, okay, well, the first thing I'm going to look at for example, is my audience. So, you know, that's going to talk about everything to do with the people coming onto your website. So what device are they on? Are they using, you know, are they on mobile? What sort of browser are they using? Where are they coming from? Are they coming from social media? Are they coming from search? Are they coming from email? And again, you can see, are they repeat users? Are they new users? You know, sort of what are their interests and what kind of behavior do they take whilst on the site? And so again, you're going to want to look at some of the demographics. So if you're selling a product primarily only to the Isle of Man, and you're seeing a huge amount of traffic from, I don't know, Russia and Asia, and very little from the Isle of Man, then that should start to say, well, hold on, you know, I need to assess why that is. So it could be a case of your keywords aren't correct. Maybe you're not doing enough in the local market in terms of your online marketing. Maybe there's something on your site or your brand name that's named similar to something in another country. But all of these things should be, the data that you're reading should be asking questions of yourself. Some of them are impossible to answer. A good example is a few years ago, I had a client who said they were getting a huge amount of traffic from the Philippines, and it was like enough traffic for there to be something, you know, that it wasn't just like a little blip. There was a lot of traffic over a lot of time. And cut a long story short, their business name was very similar to a movie that came out in the Philippines with a similar name. And so it was actually just mistaken identity. But the fact that they asked and we investigated meant that they could then actually answer the question, and they felt much better about it in the end of the day. So acquisition reports, that's another one that is going to be really important. So, you know, these reports help determine how someone arrived on your website. Now, again, this is going to be great when you're looking at something like, is my social media working for me? The SEO work that I'm doing on my site, is it valuable? If you're doing paid advertising, is it actually getting you the clicks to the website that you need? So things you'll be looking at is your referral traffic, you know, your sort of organic traffic, your social traffic. And, you know, again, you may be spending, let's say, 4 hours a week on Facebook, and you're doing a lot. You're putting out like maybe 5 updates a week. You're doing paid advertising, but you're not getting any traffic back to your website. That then should be a cause for concern. So you may then want to reevaluate what type of advertising you're doing, your messaging. Are you targeting the right group? Do you have a clear call to action? Is there a nice button on your sort of adverts and your posts that are attracting people back to the site? So what you can see is for all these different reports, if you start monitoring the data related to that report, you can start asking yourself questions and then taking action on those. So behavior reports, you know, this goes back to what we spoke about earlier. Which pages did, you know, the user visit? Which landing pages are most popular? So where are people actually entering the site? Is it on your homepage? Is it on a blog? Is it on your contact? Is it on about? You know, how long is someone spending on your website? That's a really interesting one, because sometimes people have websites that have reams of copy, and then you can see that someone's only spending a minute on the website. So that, maybe coupled with a low conversion rate, may mean that you need to refine your website copy. Maybe it's a case of trying to, you know, streamline your user journey, add videos, make it easier for people to engage with your website. You know, again, if you've got site search, are people using it? What are they searching for? And I think the whole idea with that behavior is that if you know what your objective is, then you should be able to monitor, are people actually doing things that tie into that objective? For example, if you are selling something online, are they going to the page with the product? Are they then going to the checkout page? If they drop off there, why? Is it because it doesn't look secure enough? Is it because the checkout process is too convoluted? So again, monitor that behavior. And then conversion. So this is something, again, if you've set up those goals and you're tracking those goals, then you should be quite au fait with looking at whether your goals are being completed. So let's say you've got downloads on your website, or you want your contact form filled in. You may want to see how many times that's happening. And you also want to see how many times that's happening in relation to your traffic. So if you're getting 1,000 hits on your website, but you only have one sale, why? Again, is it maybe that your website's not responsive on mobile? This again is too complicated. So as you can see, I think the most important thing is not to just jump onto Google Analytics and just look at all the data. Go in with the defined different types of reports, and you may want to document it, but in the beginning, maybe just go look and say, okay, well, let's look at all the behavior, then let's look at conversion. Don't try to do it all together, because it can become quite overwhelming. Okay, so going back to sort of KPIs that we spoke about earlier, and I spoke about goal tracking. What you can see here in this little screenshot is this just shows that if you set up your goals, and again, I've shown in this case a little link there that shows you can go to conversions, then you click on goal, and then you click on overview. So throughout these next few slides, I've just put sort of the route and the journey you need to take to get to this screen. So one of the things here you can see is that over this time period, the goals completed were 200, and you can see a value as well as your conversion rate. So I think what's great about that again is that that's something that you can really take action on. If you're seeing people aren't completing the goals, you can go back, take action, and hopefully improve on that. And you can change your time period. So it can be hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, and you can set your goal values. So for every goal that's completed, you can set a value to that. And like I said, if you haven't set up these goals, I've put a useful link that you can go in and set them up. Average time on page, you know, that for me is a really important KPI at the moment, because again, like I spoke about, if you're trying to get a message across and you've got a really low time spent on a page or on your site, then you probably can go through and test that yourself. Read half your page of copy, and if it takes you 2 minutes, but people are spending a minute, then you know that you probably need to refine that copy and reduce that copy. So bounce rate, again, if you've got a really high bounce rate and you're seeing that people are coming onto your homepage but maybe aren't exploring any more pages, you need to look at why. Are you not putting enough call to actions on your homepage? Is your navigation maybe not clear enough? Is it load speed? So is your website loading too slowly? And as they scroll through, it's just taking too long and it's maybe jumping or staggering, then they may leave. So the idea is that's something to really monitor. Page views, we've spoken about that, but that is important because, like I said, for example, if you're trying to educate your audience with blogs, it's important to understand, are your blogs being viewed? So, if you want to come onto your site, again, go on the homepage, then you want someone to hopefully explore a blog, then you've got a call to action at the end of the blog and it links to your contact page. You want to be able to see that, that person had, 3 page views per session. So all of these things should just be asking the questions. Now, sometimes it's impossible to sort of find the answer and say, well, this means that, but it should start to make you think about ways to improve the performance of your site, improve the usability, maybe improve the aesthetics. And again, even with acquisition, like I spoke about earlier, you want to make sure that if you're spending a lot of money and time on search engine optimization or on social media or on your email marketing, if you're not getting traffic to your website, then, that could be a huge issue. So, you want to look at that in relation to what your activity is. And I think, again, it's quite disheartening if you are spending a lot of time on social media and one of your objectives is to generate website traffic. If you're not seeing that people are coming to your website, it could be, again, your call to actions maybe aren't very clear, or maybe it comes down to something as simple as your content just isn't engaging enough to get someone's attention and therefore guide them to the site. So I think, again, what you want to do is you want to pick out maybe the 5 to 10 most important KPIs for you, or the 5 to 10 most important sort of metrics that you want to monitor. You can always increase that, but I think, again, looking at too much can get quite overwhelming. So just try stick to some of these basics. Once you've like sort of got used to that, you can introduce more and more. Again, just going to check the chat. Okay, so there is a question here about the fact that Google Analytics is, there is basically a current Google Analytics, and then there's a new Google Analytics. I would say, yeah, maybe both in the beginning, to answer your question, Alex. And then Rainey says, sometimes in these reports, it just says other, and you can't get more details. Am I doing something wrong? Rainey, it depends exactly where you're seeing other. If you can give me more detail as to exactly where you're seeing that, is it under acquisition? Is it under behavior? Or is it under like demographics? So if you give me more detail, I can maybe then answer the question. But it sounds like you're probably not doing anything wrong. It just depends where you're seeing that. So one of the things I want to jump into now is social media, and how I've split this is I've kind of split it into what you should be looking at in general across all platforms, and then we'll go into each specific platform. So, you know, again, most people may be using social media for a combination of brand awareness, engagement, and conversion. But some of the stats you should be looking at that will tie back to brand awareness include things like your number of visitors to your page, the number of followers you have, or likes, or sort of fans, number of social shares, you know, how many people are seeing that. That can also be an engagement rate metric, but it could also play into how far and wide your brand is being shared. And then obviously you want to look at things like, you know, how many people actually are, the reach of all of your posts. So how many people are seeing each post that you put out? And again, it's quite hard to say like return on investment on something like reach, but that's why it's a brand awareness metric, which is a lot harder to report on. So engagement, that's going to be things like, you know, the number of comments you get, the number of shares, the number of likes, or any sort of reactions. It's going to be the number of people that are engaging on a regular basis. It could also be the growth rate of your fans and followers. So, you know, if you're seeing that you have a really nice high growth rate, and then that coincides with your engagement rate, then that's obviously great. Then you get conversion. So that's going to be things like how many people click on your buttons on your page. So like Facebook now has a custom button. How many people click on that button? How many people download things? How many people actually call or contact you? So again, you can see they're quite similar to what we spoke about in relation to the website. But it is important to understand what awareness, engagement, and conversion is. So we're going to talk a little bit about Facebook. Now, again, Facebook has probably got the most sophisticated insights in comparison to the other social media tools that we're going to speak about. And actually, I think that Facebook Insights are improving all the time. And so what they were when they first started compared to what they are now, they give you so much information. And so what I'm going to run through is the information that you can actually get from there and why it's important. So, you know, actions on page. Now, again, I just spoke about the fact that Facebook for Business has introduced that you can have a custom button on your page. So it could be learn more, it could be sign up, it could be call, it could be book now. So you can now monitor how many people actually click on that. And I think that's a great metric because, again, it ties into that sort of engagement / conversion because you've engaged the person enough to get them to click on the button, which hopefully then leads to your website. And I would really monitor that. It's not a case of just assigning a button because Facebook and the setup says you need to. Actually monitor what kind of engagement you're getting through that button. If your engagement is low, maybe you want to look at changing what that button does. So if it's currently says sign up, you may want to change it to learn more. Or if it says book now, you may want to change it to another one of the options. So Facebook has all these options. And I think it's a really useful tool. I use it a lot, often when it comes to calling people. So maybe look at that button and see if it's suited to what your objectives are. Now, again, how many people are coming to your page? Now, that's obviously going to, you know, be a metric that's important to monitor, especially if you're putting a lot of effort into your page. You want to make sure that it's actually generating traffic back to that Facebook page. You know, something like Facebook page previews. So that's when people actually hover over your page information to see a preview of your page. You would have done it in sort of the main area of your Facebook page in your news feed. And so they actually monitor that now, which is an amazing stat. And I don't think many social media platforms would give you something as detailed as that. Page likes, again, we're talking about page likes, and in essence, it's great to have many page likes, but we want to focus more on engagement. Story reach, so it's talking about how many people see your stories. So if you're adding to your stories, but it's reaching a really small amount of people, you may then want to channel more of your efforts into your Facebook posts, or you want to try and change the type of stories you're putting out there so that you can increase the reach. Recommendations, you can now view the number of people who have recommended your page, which is obviously great, especially when we, if any of you were on the course where we spoke about inbound marketing and creating brand advocates for your business. Obviously, anyone who leaves you a recommendation, that goes a long way in sort of helping that life cycle of promoting your business to other people. So post engagement, you can monitor how many people like, comment, share. And again, I think that a lot of people will go on, post something on their Facebook page, immediately log out and sort of say, well, I've ticked the box, I've put something out there. But what's more important is how people are engaging with that post and how in turn you are engaging. So if there are people that are commenting on your post, are you replying to those comments? And that really is probably, I'd say post engagement is probably the most important metric that you sort of want to monitor, because that's where real value lies, is in that engagement. You know, again, there is now a stat that monitors how responsive you are in terms of responding to messages. And I think it's something you should really focus on. So if you take days and weeks to reply to a message, your response rate will obviously be quite low. So Facebook is actually prompting you to be much more sort of proactive. And again, when you hover over or you send a message to people as a Facebook sort of fan, you often see what that response rate is. So it will say something like usually replies within an hour. So if you're taking a week, that's probably not going to look good to your customers. Videos, you can now see the number of times your videos have been viewed. And it's interesting to just point out that they only monitor a video view after 3 seconds. So that's quite nice to know that, I mean, 3 seconds is a short period of time, but before it was just if someone clicked on it, but if they immediately clicked off, they would monitor that. They've now increase that to someone has to watch it for at least 3 seconds for it to be categorized as a video view. Orders, so if you're selling anything via Facebook, you can now obviously monitor everything to do with your orders. And one of the nice things within the insights area is you can also then see your top 5 latest posts, and then per post they will show you your engagement rate, your reach, how many comments, and so you can get a little snapshot of your most recent activity. And I would look at that all the time, because you want to see improvements. So if you're looking at your latest 5 posts and you see one did really badly in terms of reach and engagement, that should then prompt you to say, well, why? You know, maybe was the messaging off, maybe the content wasn't great, maybe it wasn't as engaging as the rest. So again, just monitor sort of your latest posts. Now, that's just all of the data is taken out, but that's kind of your snapshot. So when you jump into Facebook, you should see this overview. And I think what's nice about it, again, is that Facebook's made it very visually engaging. They're really good at using things like graphics and charts. So it makes it much easier to absorb. And I would be checking this at least on a weekly basis, if not more. And then if you're going to sort of have that overall report we spoke about earlier, then this would obviously tie into that report. and you can export the data. So if you want to export that data and fiddle with it in Excel, or you want to kind of import it into another reporting tool, you can do that. If you want to save it somewhere, if you want to present it to people offline, you can export the data, which I think is a great feature. So I think what I wanted to do is say, well, there's all of this data to monitor in Facebook, but what really actually matters? And again, it comes down to things like reach and engagement. You know, how many people saw those posts, but more importantly, how many people interacted with them? You know, are people actually interacting with your page? Are they clicking on your page buttons? Are they viewing your page? Are they coming back to your page on a regular basis and engaging with your brand? Now, the people is so important. So there's a whole sort of section on demographics to do with the people following your page. So it splits it obviously down into male, female, location, age. Now, again, it astonishes me that sometimes you can have a Facebook page and I'll chat to a client and they'll say, well, you know, our target audience is 45 and above. And then you look at their Facebook page and it may be dramatically different and they don't know why. So again, you need to look at those demographics in relation to your customer personas and your target audience, which we spoke about quite a bit on the first workshop. So you need to know who you want to talk to. And if you're not reaching that demographic, you may want to tweak your messaging, or you may want to look at the content that you're putting out. Is it not resonating with your target audience? Then, you know, you want to look at your specific posts, like I said. Are they doing well? And over time, you want to monitor what the trend is. So every time you put out a video, if you're getting massive engagement, you know, that should be a prompt to say, well, actually, we need to budget for more videos. If you're putting things out that are really lengthy copy-wise, you may want to go back and say, well, actually, those are getting a really low engagement rate. So maybe we need to do a shorter amount of copy and link to a blog on our website. So I think, again, you want to keep looking at your posts and trying to monitor trends. Some of it is not just going to be trends that Facebook can monitor. It's going to be trends in the messaging you're putting out, in the campaigns that you're doing. And Facebook goes back 2 years. So you can monitor this over a long period of time. You may also see trends when it comes to time. So over certain time periods, certain days, certain months, you may see there's more engagement. You obviously find that a lot within the hospitality and tourism industry over periods like Easter, TT, you know, Christmas time. There's a massive spike in engagement, and then it seems to die down in the periods where there's not as much activity. And so I always say to people, in those periods where there's lower engagement, that's where you've really got to delight your audience and come up with campaigns that's kind of lead up to those busy periods. And again, I think what you want to make sure is that, you know, looking at something like that, your total actions on page, I thought that was a really quirky graph to show you that if something like website clicks and driving website traffic is important and you're not seeing that, then obviously, again, you need to ask yourself why and take action to change everything you're doing. So I'm just going to stop for 2 seconds. Any questions, anything in the chat that you want me to answer? Can I have a sip of water if you don't mind? Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about LinkedIn. Now, again, just going back to Facebook in relation to LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter definitely don't have as much insight and as much data to monitor compared to Facebook. So it can be a little bit disappointing if you spend a lot of time in Facebook using the insights and analytics, and now you go onto LinkedIn or you go onto Twitter. You may feel slightly disappointed because you just can't get as much information. And again, I think what you've got to understand is what are your objectives, what are your goals? And once you have those, then go into each of these platforms and see if you can find data that relates to those goals and objectives. So When it comes to LinkedIn, I think, again, you know that it's more geared towards business to business tool. And so here it's really important to look at what are your objectives for LinkedIn as a whole. And when we talk about these insights, we're specifically talking about LinkedIn business pages and business profiles. We're not talking about individual pages. So what can you monitor? Well, the first thing is visitors. So it's broken down into these 3 categories of visitors, updates, and followers. So visitors being people that actually visit your LinkedIn page, versus a follower is someone who's actually subscribed to your information on your page. So someone who visits your LinkedIn page doesn't necessarily mean that they are a follower. And then your updates, obviously, that's going to break down all the information to do with the updates that you're putting out there. And I just put a little note there. Did you know you can change the time period as well as aggregate mobile and desktop for certain metrics? And so what's quite nice there is you can either see it broken down by just mobile or just desktop, or you can switch it and see all the information and data as one. So if, for example, you know that, let's say you have an app that is you're trying to get downloads for on mobile, and you are seeing a lot of traffic on your LinkedIn from mobile, then obviously that's going to be a really positive thing. Same if you know that, like, on your website is only compatible to desktop, which hopefully no one's is, but you're seeing that there's a lot of traffic on your social media platform, so mobile, that should be a big cry to say that your website needs to be mobile optimized. So jumping across, I just put these 2 little graphs in here, and basically the first one, what it is showing over a certain time period, and again, you can change that time period. So the reason you'd want to change that time period is maybe you've run a campaign for the last month, and so you want to see what the performance is over the month, or maybe you want to do it for 2 months to see what the performance of your page was and your interaction was before the campaign and now during the campaign. And so you can change that, and you can see I've switched off the aggregate your desktop and mobile traffic. I want to see it individually, but if I click that button, then it would show it all together. So it would just combine all of the results. And I think this is quite interesting because, you know, there on, let's say, the 5th of Feb, there was a big spike in page views. So hopefully then, having looked at that, I could go away and say, well, why was there a big spike? Is it something I put out? Is it something that was said about me in the press? Those are the sort of questions that you should be asking when you see big spikes like that. Or, you know, in reverse, if you see that there's very low traffic, you'll probably be able to ascertain that that's probably when you've had no activity. And again, that's so just showing the difference between the 2 graphs. And when it comes to actually measuring your updates, I think the big thing is that you want to look at your individual updates, but again, much like Facebook, you want to kind of look at the trends of your updates and what, you know, overall, what have the impressions been, overall, what have the video views been, so that you can start seeing what's working and what's not working. So when it comes to measuring individual updates, you're going to be looking at things like your impressions. So how many times was that post shown to different people? You can look at your video views. So how many times again was your video viewed? Clicks. So, you know, that monitors things like who clicked on your company name, who clicked on the content or the logo. So in a post, if you can imagine it, got your logo, you've got your company name, and then you've got the actual post at the bottom. So it monitors if anyone clicked on any of those 3 elements. It also gives you a click-through rate. So that is the number of clicks divided by the number of times it's shown, so your impressions. And I'll talk a little bit about the click-through rate in a second. Interactions, so that's the engagement. So that's when people comment, when they give you, you know, now there's all those different sort of interactions where you can heart it, you can celebrate it, you can like it. So it's going to monitor all of that. It's also going to interestingly show, which I think is quite valuable, is how many followers you gained from that specific sort of update. So if you've put an update out there and it's done really well and it's generated you actual followers, that's really great. And so you may want to look at that, especially if you're investing money and trying to get more followers on your page through paid advertising. Then engagement, obviously, again, that's the engagement rate is the number of people that sort of engage with it and compared to who saw it. So in here, this is just a little snapshot that shows for each of these 3 posts, you know, the number of impressions. You can see first there, these weren't videos, so that's going to be blank. Then it's going to show how many people, how many clicks there were. So again, remembering that those clicks will be either on the logo, on the post itself, or on our company name. Then that is your click-through rate. So they say that a good click-through rate across social media is 2 to 5%, which is quite low. So it depends which platform. They've got slightly different click-through rates. Again, industry standards are different. So if you are posting on LinkedIn or any of the platforms and you think your click-through rate is particularly low, it's probably worth doing some research about the general click-through rate pertaining to that social media platform, as well as click-through rates pertaining to your specific industry, which you can find online for many industries. So there's your reactions. So that's if someone celebrated it or liked it. There's your comments, there's your shares, and then there's your engagement rate. So as you can see, when I look at those 3 posts, that first post would, in my mind, be deemed as the most successful, probably because it got 80 clicks and 17.51% click-through rate. You know, someone could argue maybe that this second post did really well as well because it's got more impressions. But for me, my objective is to get people to click through to our website or to the link I enclosed, so that they would be the most successful in my mind. Now, again, in this right-hand corner, you can show different amounts of posts. So you can, you know, refine it to 10, it could be 50. Try do it in small bite chunks, otherwise it can be quite overwhelming to see all the data. And again, you can change the sort of date range that you look at. The nice thing about LinkedIn as well, and quite similarly on Facebook, is that often they've got these little question marks. If you hover over them, it gives you more information about that sort of metric or that dimension. So if you're ever confused as to what that is, just hover over or click on it, and it should give you more information. So, you know, when it comes down now to the actual visitors and followers, then break down it by demographic. So you're looking at, in particular, you're going to be looking at their job function, because LinkedIn, obviously, by nature, is very much associated to that. So, you know, doing a little snapshot there, you can see that the most represented industry is marketing and advertising on this page. Then you can go down into all different types. You can break it down into location. So where are they, their job function, their seniority, and their company size. Now, again, if you are selling a B2B product and you're trying to target the marketing and advertising space, then obviously this would be perfect for you. However, if you were trying to target real estate and you have such a small proportion of real estate followers, that's obviously going to be a cause for concern. So the same with your follower stats. Again, just a reminder, visitor stats are people that have come to your page. Followers are people that are following your page. So just know the difference between those two. And, you know, when it comes to the followers, you can see your total followers, you can see new followers. And again, you can also look at companies that you may want to track. And I think what's quite nice about that is that's a feature you can see on Facebook, and it's a feature you can see on LinkedIn. So you can actually see how your competitors are doing in terms of their growth. And it's nice to just have a bit of a benchmark because it keeps you on your toes and obviously keeps you quite engaged. So again, any questions on those two? I know we're going through it quite briefly, but again, we wanted to give you like a bit of a, you know, overview. If there's something really specific to any of those platforms that you're battling with, or you want more information, give me a shout in the chat there. Alternatively, use their sort of own business tools. So like Facebook and LinkedIn have really great tools where they produce amazing blogs, case studies, tips and tricks. I get most of my information from them, and obviously from third-party sites, but honestly, they always willing to give information, so you can dive really deep into why they do things, how they do things, and how it's worked for others. So Nikki has asked a nice question. Are you better having a page on all social media platforms or just one or two? So Nikki, such a great question. I think we covered it quite a bit, possibly in the first session. The answer is you need to do what's right for you. So when I speak to clients and they say things like, you know, I'm on every social media platform because I think I need to be, I actually think that you need to be on the platforms where your customers are. So if you sit down and analyze what are your business and marketing objectives, who is your customer, and if you do the exercise of maybe doing a customer persona, and you may have multiple, you then need to decide where do your customers live. And so again, you can do some research and see, well, what kind of demographics can I target on something like Facebook? You know, on LinkedIn, we know it's more of a business to business tool. So I think that the big idea is choosing platforms that are going to allow you to target your own customers. And again, you may want to start small. So maybe you get Facebook right, and then you go into Instagram, and then you go into the other tools. So don't overextend yourself, because then you're probably not going to do it properly. And rather choose platforms that you know, A, your target audience is there, B, you can do it properly, and C, you have the time to invest in it. So it's definitely not a case of just having a presence on everything. It's about engaging on them. So if you in particular are thinking about a platform and you're not sure if it's right for you, give me a shout and I can probably help in terms of guiding you on that. I see Lindsay sent a question. What would be the top 5 things you would look at on Google Analytics, and what benchmarks would you base them against? Lindsay, do you think we could come back to that at the end? Because I kind of sum it all up. So I'll come back to you on that question. Twitter, so what matters? Now, I don't know how many people are using Twitter, and I'd be quite interested to hear. I think Twitter is one of those things where it's such a great platform, but I think it's possibly misunderstood. And a lot of the time, I think that it's quite hard to gain a following on Twitter. It's probably the hardest platform when we talk about the local market. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you've sort of, you know, created a really strong Twitter presence, then I'd love to hear about it. But I have always heard that people struggle a bit with Twitter. But either way, if you're on Twitter, they do have great analytics, and they've improved a lot compared to what it used to be. So when you have an account, you can click on your analytics tab, and what you will see are things like your tweet impressions. So again, how many times have your tweets been seen? Then it breaks down into your top tweets. So quite similar to LinkedIn and Facebook, it shows you your top performing posts, which is quite nice again, because then you can monitor what's working and what's not working. You can look at your engagement and your engagement rates. So, you know, are people actually following your posts? Are they interacting with them? Are they retweeting them? Are they commenting? You can look at your follower growth. So how many followers are you getting? And is that growth rate positive? You can look at how many people are visiting your individual profile. You can look at the number of mentions and who mentioned you. And then if you're posting video content, you can look at specific data relating to the performance of that video. So what I've done there is just shown like a little snapshot that I found that basically just shows it. You know, again, your tweet impressions, your profile visits, number of new followers. So it's just a snapshot, a bit like your overview dashboard that you see on Facebook. So what's quite nice is if you are putting effort into building a sort of engaged Twitter following, and certainly using it for business purposes, you want to see things like the impressions of your tweets on the rise. You want to see that people are engaging with it. So much like the other platforms, you can change the time period in which you view the activity, and then it's just in a little graphical form. It shows you how, in this case, how many impressions you got over time. You can also export this data. That also proves useful if you're going to do the overall report. Now, just ending on Twitter, one of the things that I would say is that if you are using Twitter and you are using it for business purposes in terms of trying to cultivate leads, it is something quite hard to monitor because there isn't as sophisticated conversion metrics that you can monitor. And it's probably going to come down to this being more of a brand awareness tool or a customer service tool. So I think there is a bit of a reputation with Twitter that if you want to complain about something, then you use Twitter to do so. So it is quite hard to monitor things like conversion. But if you want to monitor your awareness and your engagement, then it definitely does the job. Now, Instagram. Now, again, Instagram is a great tool, mostly because I think it's owned, it's owned by Facebook. So a lot of what you are seeing in terms of the progression of their analytics tools is very much governed by what is happening on Facebook and what they're doing. So I think, again, if you are not seeing insights or analytics, it's because you're probably on a personal profile and you don't have a professional profile. If that is something that has been an issue for you, then you need to switch your profiles to professional or /business. And if you're having issues with that, just pop it in the chat and I can guide you through it. But you're not going to see these analytics unless you're on that professional profile. So again, what can you see? Well, you can see impressions, so number of times your posts have been seen. Then you can see your interactions, so the number of actions taken on your actual account or your profile. You're going to see your reach, so the number of unique Instagram accounts that have seen your posts, which is great. You can see your profile visits, so how many times people have actually clicked on your profile and viewed your profile. Website clicks, which is great. If you've linked your profile to your website, you'll be able to monitor how many times people go to your profile and actually click on your website link. And in turn, you should be then seeing that within your Google Analytics report. So for any of these social media platforms, if you're monitoring website clicks, then you should be able to correlate the same results within your Google Analytics. If you've got an email or a call link on your profile, you can monitor how many times that's clicked, which is great. And you can obviously see how many times your account has been mentioned. Now, what it's also broken down into is that's kind of like the general analytics. Then they break it down into audience, which is great because I think, again, this was something that they introduced because Facebook is just providing so much detail. So they needed to provide similar detail. You can see your top locations. So that's broken down into your cities and countries. So again, if you're trying to target people on the Isle of Man, but you don't have a big following on the Isle of Man, that should be a cause for concern. It breaks it also down by age range. So generally Instagram users are a lot younger. However, it does monitor all the way through from the 13 to 17 all the way to 65 plus. It breaks it down by gender, so male or female. Really interesting. I have been sort of seeing a lot of people saying that they battle to get men on Instagram in terms of following of their page. If you've experienced that, again, it's always interesting to find out information from other people. Pop me a message on the chat, but you can see just from that graph, 72% of this account are followed by women versus 28%. So again, it shows you most active times. Now, this is something that people don't take advantage of. So as you can see there, it's showing that my sort of followers on Instagram are most active during those times. So that means that during those hours and days, you should probably try and monitor that and then post when it coincides with the peaks. So if you are seeing that on a Sunday night at 9 p.m., no one is really interacting on Instagram that are your followers, probably don't put something out at that time. Rather look for when the peaks are and when most followers are online. And as I say, it breaks it down by time and by day. Then you can go into your individual post analytics, which is quite nice. So you can, each post that you now put out, you can see if it's actually working. And I think this is awesome because before, it felt like people weren't taking Instagram too seriously when it came to business. It was very much put out a nice image and hopefully link it back to, Facebook or link it back to your website. You can now see if each of your posts are actually working. So you can see your interactions. So are people going from that post to your profile? Are they clicking on your hyperlinks? You can see how many times your account was found through Discovery. So I'm not sure if anyone's used Discovery. I use it all the time. And again, if you use hashtags and you're posting really engaging content, you'll probably find that people will find your content through Discovery versus being an actual follower of your Instagram page. It will show you again how many new followers you received from this specific post, which is great. Shows you your reach, shows you your impressions. It also shows you how many times someone saved your post. So if you ever think, oh, I wonder if anyone actually saves the things I put out there, you can now see broken down by each post, which I think is super cool, especially if you may be in like, you know, in retail. It's interesting to see if people go and save a post and maybe they come back to it at a later stage, like they see a product they like, they save it, and then hopefully they'll come back and purchase. And you can obviously see the number of comments on your post. So I think the one thing about Instagram is that it's probably gone from more of a relaxed tool to it can now be a strategic business tool. So if you're not using these analytics or not looking into them, I definitely would encourage you to pay more attention. And, you know, again, you constantly want to be improving on the stats that you're seeing. Now, we've kind of gone through everything and like a little bit of like it's been a bit quick, I understand. But now what I want to talk about is sort of, there is so much data out there, but now what do you do with it? And coming back to Lindsay's question about like analyzing the results and what are you looking for? And then, you know, what are those benchmarks? So I think the big thing is, again, is to break down your reports. So if you're going to formally report, or even if you're just going to view things, what you want to do is just break it down by those objectives and those goals. So if you want to increase your brand awareness, look at things like your impressions, reach, page views. If you want to generate sales, look at things like your website link clicks on social, your call to action buttons, your website clicks. If you want to build a community or improve your sort of communication with your customers, then you're obviously going to look at your engagement rates. And so again, don't look at it all and just lump it into one objective. Make sure that you're looking at things individually. So another way to sort of split your reports is you may want to split them into like an SEO/website report. So that then could be your traffic volumes, your sources and conversions. You could look at like a PPC report. So if you're doing any pay-per-click advertising, Google AdWords, you may want to generate a report that looks at your click-through rates specifically for that and your cost per conversion data. Then you may want to split social media into an individual report. And you could go even a step further and split that into per platform, and then your email marketing again. If you're using something like MailChimp or Campaign Monitor or Sendinblue, they have their own data that you can monitor in their own reports. And a lot of these platforms again allow you to export all of the data. So you could combine it into one, or you could use one of the tools that we'll go through in a second. And you can look at maybe, instead of having to manually do it, rather connect all your accounts into one central tool, and it will then generate the reports for you. Now, you know, taking action. So I think in a way, Lindsay, some of these are going to answer your questions about like what you top 5 things you would be looking at. So a big area of concern is often a high bounce rate on a website. So taking into context what Georgia said about if you have a single page website, but you know, a lot of people are concerned about having a high bounce rate, especially if they have a multi-page website. So the question is if you see that your bounce rate is high or it's increasing, you may want to check something like your load speed. You may want to look at your message hierarchy. You may want to look at whether your website is compatible with different browsers and different devices. So again, if that's increasing and then you're monitoring that, then there is a cause for concern and you want to try and reduce that or at least maintain it to a certain point. Each industry is probably going to have a different bounce rate, and the style of your website also impacts that. If you've got a low engagement rate, so, you know, if you're looking across across all of your different platforms, and in particular social media, and you see that your engagement rate is really low, then that's where you need to look at maybe the messaging of your posts. Maybe you need to introduce more video, more imagery, things that really appeal to audiences. Maybe you're also not engaging in return. So maybe you're getting comments, but you're not actually engaging with those comments and replying, and therefore you're not actually, people then get despondent and think, well, I'm not going to keep replying because last time I didn't get a comment back. You know, if your social media traffic is low, I think that's a big one in Google Analytics. If you're spending a lot of time on social media, but your referral traffic to your website is quite low, then again, you probably want to look at your social media strategy, and in particular, your strategy for each platform. It could mean that you need to improve the quality of what you're putting out there. Maybe it's the frequency. Maybe it's looking at your target audience. So you're targeting the wrong people. And, you know, I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is if you are putting a lot of time into social media, but you're not seeing that convert into website traffic, it can be quite disheartening. So you want to take action, you want to try new things. And for any of these, if you have like a really specific concern, pop it in the chat and we can discuss it in a second. If you get low repeat users, that sometimes can be a massive area of concern for clients, especially if they are, let's say, investing money in a content marketing strategy. So they're putting out videos, they're putting out blogs, but they're not getting people coming back to the site to engage with that. So again, you may look at the messaging. Same if you're not putting out content and you see that repeat users are a problem, maybe you want to introduce a blog. Maybe you want to make sure that you're always changing the content on your website so it's staying relevant. And, you know, again, if you've got incomplete goals or low conversion, so if you go into your website and you see that you've set up goals, but no one's actually completing them, you need to go back and say, well, is my checkout process too convoluted? Is the form actually working? The amount of times we've had people get in touch because for months their website form wasn't working and they weren't actually checking that. And so it's all well and good to drive traffic back to the site, but if you don't have a form that's actually working and you can convert those visitors into leads, then you're wasting quite a bit of time on that. So I think, Lindsay, in terms of benchmarks, that's quite hard to say, but the things I would be monitoring, I'm not sure at what level you are looking at your data, but for me, it would certainly be things like your bounce rate, is that high? Looking at where your traffic is coming from. And again, in relation to the activity that you're doing, I would be looking at sort of your demographics. Again, if you're trying to sell a specific product to a specific demographic and you're not seeing that demographic represented in Google Analytics, that would be a major cause for concern. And then I would definitely monitor things like, what devices are people using, what browsers, and then tying that back to whether your website caters for that. So if your website's not mobile optimized and you are seeing a huge amount of traffic from mobile, but then you're actually seeing a high bounce rate, that there could be the tie. So maybe then you've got to make sure that your website is mobile optimized in order to capture that traffic. And I think all in all, I'd be looking at the behavior of people on your site. So if someone's arriving on your homepage and then they drop off, why aren't they going to the about page or the services page and then to the contact page or the shop or the checkout or the book now? So I'd be monitoring what people's behavior is in relation to your objectives for your conversions and your goals. Another thing you may also kind of want to look at is, when are your peak times? So, if you're posting a blog every Tuesday, but you're not seeing a spike in your traffic, again, your blog's probably not something that's drawing people in. And then possibly you also want to look at specific pages on your website. So maybe look at different pages. And if you're seeing really low traffic, you need to analyze whether that page is working. Is it the content? Is it, do you need to add more imagery? Do you need to change the layout? Navigation can also be a huge issue. If your navigation in your site is not clear, you'll probably find that people aren't finding some of those internal pages because they can't get there. So I think all in all, that's probably like a snapshot of what you should be looking at. In terms of, me saying something like you should be getting X hits on your website, it's so dependent on your specific site, on, you know, on what industry, and certainly on what your objectives are and how you've set up your website to sort of fulfill those objectives. And again, you're going to go through trends. You know, people, for example, in hospitality and tourism are going to see really skewed reporting over this COVID period compared to what it used to be. And so it is quite disheartening, because when you look back in a year's time, and hopefully everything will be back to normal, if you reflect on what sort of website traffic you were getting at this time compared to then, it's probably not going to be a true reflection. So sometimes you also have to look outside of all of the analytics to the context of where you are as a business. It's the same when you launch a new website. People get extremely excited because there's this, you know, massive spike in traffic, but that's not always a true reflection of what is going to consistently take place. Normally it's a lot of people coming on just to look at the site and be inquisitive. So I always say, even when it comes to doing something like paid advertising, maybe what you want to do is allow your website to be live for at least 3 months in order to get like a benchmark of where you are before you do something like paid advertising, like Google AdWords or display advertising. That way you can see, is it having a real impact on your website traffic, and in turn all of the other positive results. So Lindsay, I hope that answered it. If you have anything specific you want to talk about in relation to your specific website and your objectives, then maybe we can chat about it offline. So I think I love this. It said data will talk to you if you're willing to listen to it. So again, I think that data sometimes can be quite overwhelming, and certainly it can sometimes feel negative. You go on and you're like, oh, there's a dip. But what it should be is something that you look at and you say, okay, well, what can I do to improve it? Or certainly what can I do to maintain it? And so, you know, I think that ignoring it, that's just not an option anymore. You need to sort of use it and allow it to empower your decision making. And certainly, you know, if you're looking at, let's say, your website and you just don't think it's working for you, instead of making an assumption, if you've got Google Analytics running, you'll be able to make a much more informed decision and say, well, actually, it isn't working for me because I'm not getting the traffic, I'm not getting the conversions. You know, again, I often say to people, so how do you think your website's doing? And they say, oh, phenomenal, it's doing really well. But then they don't have analytics on it. So possibly they're just monitoring it by people saying it's a really great website, or maybe they're monitoring it by their staff saying, oh, people found us through the website. But it is a little bit loose, and therefore you want to use these analytics tools to really define whether it's working or not working, and then take action from there. Now, there are some cool tools that you could use that, and again, all of them have differing and scalable pricing options, but a lot of these tools will allow you to take all of your different analytics, put it into one, and generate a single report. And these are just some of them. The other thing I put in there is a cool tool called Hotjar. And basically what Hotjar does is it monitors people's activities. So it basically does heat mapping of how people journey through your website. Can be extremely interesting, because when you look back on it, you can often see how people are interacting, where they're clicking, where they spend most of their time. So go check that out if you haven't. And then the other tools are simply tools where you can put in your, plug in your Google Analytics, plug in your social media analytics, and generate one sort of report. And some of them also interact with things like your CRM system, you know, something like HubSpot. That is obviously a CRM and an inbound marketing software system that you can actually use to report on multiple different platforms. So if you're going to take it really seriously, I would suggest probably digging in and using some of these tools. However, in the beginning, just use the tools that each platform provide, get to grips with that, and then you can dive over into the serious tools. Now, I promised you useful links, and there are a lot here, and just wanted to run through them. Just a general link to Google Analytics. Setting up Google Analytics, that is the same guy that has the YouTube video, and you'll find his YouTube video within this actual blog. It's a great blog, really easy to follow, and I think it's probably hitting at the right level. If you want to set up a goal, I've put a link to a support page on Google's website where it just runs you through how to do that. And again, I think that's something that if you aren't doing, I would definitely encourage you to set those up. Then I found this quite interesting. Neil Patel, I've linked to him in our 2 previous workshops. He has something called 12 useful Google Analytics reports. And basically these are reports, custom reports that you can import into your Google Analytics. So other people have built these and shown you how you can import them. And they're quite specific. So, you know, obviously today it's quite hard with different people of different skill sets, different businesses of different sizes, different website types. If you really want to drill in and get really specific about it, then that's a good article for you. I've also put something to do with Facebook Insights, buffer.com, another great blog. They have a cool sort of article about getting to know Facebook Insights. Same with Twitter Analytics. They've got some cool articles on their actual business platform. LinkedIn the same. Then there is a social media report by Sprout Social that just goes into overall reporting. And then I've also put Hootsuite there because that's another sort of platform that you may want to go read about because they've got a cool blog and they've got cool software that you can use in terms of your reporting. So I think just in closing, it is such a big subject area, and I'm hoping that this kind of just found the right balance between being detailed enough but not too detailed, because I was just really conscious that if someone hasn't dived into Google Analytics or hasn't really been using these platforms, if we went too detail driven, then we'd lose a lot of people. However, what I'd be interested to find out is, and maybe you can pop it in chat, and Bex, maybe we can have chat open just for a few minutes, but if you wanted to pop in there, if you'd be interested in a more advanced course that really drills into serious detail, I'd just be interested to kind of ascertain what's out there in terms of that desire. But I think with analytics, don't get overwhelmed by it. Use it to your advantage, and just try and get to grips with it slowly but surely. Don't ignore it, and let it fuel all of your questions. There's not going to be always a straightforward answer, but by process of elimination, I think you'll probably get there. So, you know, it's not as easy as saying, oh, high bounce rate, this is the solution. It's going to be high bounce rate. Have you considered all of these things? So I think, you know, I hope that this has been informative, and certainly I hope it's sparked interest in how powerful data can be for you. And I think, again, if you are looking to take this a step further, use some of those tools because they provide such great guidance. They take a lot of the groundwork out. And just as a starting point, make sure that you have Google Analytics running on your website. And yeah, know that I am only a message away if you ever need anything. And for those who've done all 3 of the sessions, all 3 of the workshops, I'm very grateful. I hope you found them useful, and I'm really hoping to connect with all of you in the coming months. I know it's a hard time for businesses, so if there's any advice I can give, or if you want to chat about anything, please do get in touch with me. Thanks so much, Bex. Back to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jess. I really appreciate that. And my goodness me, I've learned so much, because analytics is something that, I will be honest, I have never looked at, like ever. And Hannah from PDMS is on the call. PDMS look after our website. So yeah. I've just confessed to her that I don't do anything with it. But she did say that our website is set up for analytics. So, you know, we've had that website for years and I've never looked at it. And yet it's always been there. So I've learned that. I've also downloaded the app onto my phone. So
oh, that's great. You're in good hands with them. So I'm sure if there was any big area of concern, they probably would have reached out to you. So
yeah, but it's really, really useful. So thank you so much. And thank you to all of you participants for joining the call today. I will send you a little follow-up. I'll send you the recording and Jessie's slides, which has all the links and the videos. I'm going to watch that little Google Analytics video as well, which looks really useful. And I'll also send you the slides that come from the Department for Enterprise, just in terms of some funding options as well. So thank you all so much. And thank you, Jess, for the final in the series of 3 workshops that you've delivered for us. absolutely phenomenal. You're such a great speaker. You get things across so well, and we really appreciate your support and everything that you do for the local community as well. Fundy are top-notch business, so thank you so much, and take care everybody, and we'll see you in the flesh soon, hopefully.
Bye.